A graduate of Williams College, Tim earned his master's in architecture from the Harvard Graduate School of Design. In addition to working for builders and fabricators, Tim's professional experience includes positions at architecture firms in San Francisco, in Cambridge, and most recently with the William Rahn Associates in Boston. Tim leads Shake's design process from concept through construction documents and construction administration. Together, Lucas and Tim strive to create projects that are carefully designed and built to exceed owners' expectations and that contribute positively to the surrounding community and greater environment. Zach Hardoon, class of 2005, and Kevin Mullen, class of 2010, are carpenters and craftsmen with Cannon Hill Woodworking, a custom furniture shop founded by Zach and their colleague Sam O'Leary. Their team specializes in crafting residential and commercial tables and benches, desks and bars, kitchen islands, and shelving. After graduating from the University of Pennsylvania, Zach spent 2 years as an elementary school teacher in both Boston and San Francisco before becoming a professional carpenter. He got his start with Robertson Design Build, now Shake Architecture and Construction, and high-end residential remodel and new construction projects. He took a break in 2016 to hike the entire Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. Prior to founding Cannon Hill, Zach spent years building tables in the Boston area. With the Cannon Hill team, he has built and delivered more than 500 unique custom tables, including to the home of actor Steve Carell, who Zach says is, quote, our most famous client, and realistically, our only famous client, end quote. After graduating from RL, Kevin went on to Boston College, where he earned a degree in English, harboring an ambition to learn furniture making the whole time. Originally a home builder by trade, Kevin met Zach on the job sites where they ended up working together. Kevin has worked with several high-end residential contractors in Boston and also ran his own carpentry subcontracting outfit. After helping out at Cannon Hill off and on over the years and assisting on the shop build-out, Kevin eventually joined the Cannon Hill team full-time. He now splits his time at Cannon Hill between the shop floor and the administrative side of the company. Both Zach and Kevin have also served alma mater well as coaches over the years, Zach with wrestling and Kevin with lacrosse. We're grateful to have these artisans with us this morning to talk about their work and their various paths to it. Their collective contributions to this school as students are both broad and deep across academics, athletics, and the arts. Among them, we have class presidents and glee club singers, captains of varsity wrestling, soccer, lacrosse, hockey, and cross country, a gold medalist in the National Latin Exam, and a featured speaker at the annual fund kickoff dinner during his senior year. I know they will touch upon some of that this morning in ways you can relate to. I also want to take this opportunity to remind you that while visiting their work in the Great Hall, please be mindful of the fact that the pieces of furniture there on display are art, and we should treat them as such, with care and respect. And now, if you'll join me in welcoming back 4 illustrious sons of RL, I'll gladly turn this all over to these gentlemen seated next to me, as well as to Mrs. Berg. Welcome them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Brennan, and thanks to all of you for being here with us this morning. This is a real treat. So I thought we would begin with my asking a few questions that I had prepared, and then we'll open it up to student questions before we depart here today. So if we could begin, can you talk a little bit about how you arrived at carpentry and architecture design? Had you intended that early on, or was that a path that sort of took shape later on?
I can start. I came to architecture probably at a pretty young age, knew that I was interested in it. I still remember 7th grade basic design, Mr. Buckley telling me that I would be crazy to pursue it. He said that it was, he said it with a kind of a sparkle in his eye, though. He I think, knew that it was going to be a tough path at times. But for me, it was something that kind of married an interest in woodworking and kind of creative problem solving. Really appreciate the process of kind of arguing through how to approach a diverse set of problems, and so that this kind of profession is just that.
Yeah, I guess I when I think of that question, I think back to my time here and my time in the art studio working with Mr. Buckley. That was certainly my, I wouldn't say I excelled in other areas of academia here, but I always felt confident and comfortable in the art studio, and went on to be an art major at Dartmouth in pursuing architecture, which is under the heading of studio art at Dartmouth, and found myself in a wood shop first through a sculpture class, and just really caught the bug and felt I was moving towards going to architecture school. But the more I spent time learning, picking up carpentry skills, there was kind of no turning back, and the idea of more school and all that Tim went through to get where he is was less appealing to me than being able to jump into my career as a builder. But yeah.
I started with Lucas summer after I left BC. Was interested in it, but hadn't set any path in that direction. And then he needed a laborer. I knew you have to start at the bottom. And in that first week, I was running around on the roof with a Sawzall of a house in Cambridge, going, "This is pretty cool. I could do this." And then basically, it just becomes a matter of you don't want to be a hack. So you stay with it, and you learn skills, and you get better. And that's kind of the thing that's always kept me in it, is learning the next skill and doing work that the next guy who sees it isn't going to go, "Well, now what was he thinking?" So
I would say I really didn't end up in carpentry and woodworking because I was drawn to the craft or knew growing up that I was going to be interested in working with my hands. I studied in college I studied urban studies. I thought maybe I would be a teacher, or maybe I would be in city planning in some capacity. And then after a few years of teaching, there were just basically two things I knew I liked. One was being active at work, and the other was I just had this feeling like I needed to be my own boss. And I called John Wibby, who was a RL teacher, and I started asking him about journalism, because I thought, oh, well, journalists can kind of be freelancers, and they're on the go, and we talked about it for a while, and I was thinking about that. So I called RL I was thinking about grad school. I called RL to get my transcripts, and Lucas's mother picked up the phone, Karen Robertson, who was at the time still working at the school, and she told me what Lucas was doing for a living. I was at the time living in San Francisco. I was about to move back to Boston, and I said, "Oh, is he hiring?" She said, I'll ask him. And 2 weeks later, I was showing up with Lucas and Kevin. I knew nothing. First or second day on the job, I almost cut my thumb off. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
yes.
And then it just goes from there. So you don't always know. You don't have to know. Sometimes you just kind of figure it out.
That's great. Thank you, guys. So you're all doing work for specific clients who perhaps have a sense of what they're looking for going into a project, or even a rough sense of what they're looking for. How do you begin a project? Where do you start, and what's the process from there?
Well, let's see. I mentioned problem solving, and I can't emphasize that enough. If we have a client who doesn't understand that what they're embarking on is the act of problem solving, then we're probably not the best fit for them. I think people have a perception of design as I don't want to say this high-minded pursuit, because there really is a value to the artistic and creative exploration and expression, but not often enough are we talking about the practical, and I think that we get interviewed by clients, but we also interview clients, and so it really has to be a good fit, and they have to understand the constraints of the site, and they have to appreciate the context, and also have to appreciate the constraints of budget and schedule, and then we have a conversation, and if we're in the ballpark of thinking there's potential for a project, then we pursue it. But we've been fortunate to work with really, really great people and clients, and
We've had incredible clients, and incredibly fortunate. And,
Yeah.
Tim uses the word partnering a lot in terms of our relationship with our clients. We're not, you know, it's a with remodeling, it's very much a service industry. It's very much, you know, I remember Paul Langione, father of Matt Langione, who was a year behind me at RL, first construction company I ever worked for, just expressing to me there's nothing that you can, there's nothing more intimate in terms of working with a family than working with their home. It's
Emotional.
It can be very emotional, very rational. Great people can behave irrationally. And so, you know, we're partnering with these folks. Most of our projects, different from what you guys are doing, most of our projects take a year, if not longer. We had a project in 2020, 2021 that was a 2-year-long project. So
2 years of construction, year of design before.
yeah, so establishing these relationships and you know, making sure that we have complete faith and trust in the folks that we're working with, and that they completely trust us is critical.
I was listening to the answers and kind of forgot the question.
The question, Zach, was how do you begin a project? Where do you
Oh,
start?
yeah. Well, the honest truth is, you know, like, and these guys did a good job explaining it, is that, you know, we're all running businesses. So Kevin and I can't just go out and source thousands of dollars of materials and make a table for fun and then sort of, you know, make an Instagram post about it. We need to be able to, you know, sell ourselves, sell our company, and sell people on a future project, because everything that we do is custom, as is what they do. So you need someone to be sold on you. So, you know, an element of that is your past work shows your success, and then an element of that is that interpersonal connection. As Timmy said, like, they're interviewing you, but you're kind of also interviewing them. You're making sure that you're going to be the right fit for them in your process. And then they both hit the nail on the head with that word, like, we're very fortunate. We're very fortunate in our careers and with our businesses to be able to be, you know, selective with the projects we take. You know, our company turns away about 90% of the business that comes our way. And it's a good spot to be in. And I think the last thing would be, like, as Lucas noted, you know, they do large-scale projects that take years. So I'm assuming that we have there's similar elements to our process in starting off with the client, but ours needs to be much more condensed. Our company makes 4 tables a week. We have a team of 8. So, you know, essentially, you know, from a sales standpoint, we need to sell a table almost every day of the week. So we just take that process and shrink it down. I feel like that answer is kind of more about, like, not necessarily about the creative process, if that's what you were getting at. So, but it's more about just, like, that's the barrier. That's the honest answer. Is it the first barrier is sales. It's money. It's can we make this thing happen? You know, and then it's creative.
Yeah, from a slightly more nuts and bolts perspective on, you know, how the table comes from, you know, an idea to a product in the world, I would say there's basically 2 categories. Clients come to us saying, I want a table that looks like this with an image, or they say, I want a table that accomplishes this with a space. And whichever one of those it is, you know, we either start from this aesthetic ideal and go, okay, that's great, we can make you a table that looks like that. What's the space look like that it fits in? What are the clearances? Yada, yada. And that's where sort of experience comes in. When someone comes to us with, hey, I've got this funky little dining nook, we've got to figure out how to get a table in here that seats this many people, still allows the flow of the house to continue uninterrupted, then we can sort of start from what's almost more like an engineering position for engineering the flow of the room, and then we can work them through all the various aesthetic decisions, species of wood, style of table, all that sort of thing. So whichever place you start at, the other one comes into play basically immediately, and that's sort of where our experience becomes a part of it, with letting people know what will work and what won't work in a given situation.
Thank you. So you mentioned problem solving. What do you guys rely on when things go wrong?
I mean, I'm certainly, we know a lot of sole practitioners within the industry and in our network, but it's certainly surrounding yourself with a team, having a partnership has been huge. Lucas had his own business that he had run for a while before we started Shake in 2017, and you were wearing all of the hats at that time, and I've taken some of them, but it's definitely been proven to be really useful to have two folks at least when you have to have some hard conversations with folks.
Yeah, I'll second that. Being able to rely on each other. The running my own company, Robertson Design Build, for 8 years. I had these two guys with me for 2 and 4 years, which I think Kevin's still the longest reigning employee ever. But having the team around you, truthfully, for me, it can be a lonely profession. Coming from a world like Roxbury Latin and Dartmouth, I don't have a lot of peers that are CSL licensed builders. There's just not a lot of us, and partnering up with Tim has made just an immense difference. And so, nothing we can't figure out.
I think I have like two sides to that answer. There's the client side where because all the work we do is custom, and because we like to challenge ourselves in different ways, and because you like to please the customer, sometimes you go out on a limb and do something that's a little bit out of your comfort zone. And I'm thinking of a table we built for a young couple in Somerville, and they sent us an image of a table. It was in a style we'd never built before, and we wanted to kind of nail the spec and design that was really important to them. And we built the table, and it was kind of like a blob of Jell-O. We just didn't really nail the proportions and the angles right. And in a situation like that, one, you have to rely on your engineering skills. And tables are fairly simple. You dive deeper, they get more complex. But at the end of the day, it is just a table. And you think about ways in which you can repurpose their design. And then the other side, and so that's sort of the engineering side. And then the other side is the client relations side. Before you call this person on the phone and say, "Oh my God, the table's shaking," you think of a logical, step-by-step way that you're going to explain this to them and present them on the solutions, so that instead of just creating this moment of panic, you've sort of logically brought them in a very clear and calm way to sort of solution A, solution B, solution C, and you rely on the fact that you've already have good interpersonal relation with them, that they're going to take it well, and those are the jobs that end up, when they end at the end, those are the people that sing your praises even more, because you had an issue and you worked really hard with them to solve it. So those are things that are intangibles that come from your entire life. It has nothing to do with craftsmanship or things you can learn in a workshop. It's the interpersonal skills that you're learning now, and it's the presentation skills that you're learning now as RL students and just as students in general.
Yeah, and when things go wrong, there are things that you can fix personally, and there are things that are out of your control. And I'm going to tread very lightly here because these wounds are very fresh right now between Zach and me. There's one project that, there was some miscommunication, and it didn't, some things were up in the air till far too late in the project, and so what got delivered wasn't exactly what the client wanted. There were, it was possibilities of going in two different directions, even at the time of delivery. So, okay, he decided that he wanted something different. We can do that, right? All that means is, I spend a couple evenings in the workshop fixing the thing, and we're good. We're good to go. Sometime later today, I'll be making a call to a town called Far West, Utah, to badger a steel worker who was supposed to get a table based to us 2 months ago. That's something that goes wrong, and you kind of, it hurts when you mess up, but when there's very little that you can do to, get our client what she wants and what she's paid for, that's a very frustrating situation.
Yeah, regardless, I think in all these scenarios, you can't cut any corners. You can't shy away from these tough conversations with clients. You got to meet any issues head on. That's certainly a big part of such a personal business.
So you touched upon this a little bit in certain answers that you've given, but what sorts of disciplines do you have to understand really well? Or what sorts of skills do you have to have honed in order to do this work well?
I mean, we're all doing different things when we get into the specifics of it. For me, as a builder and a manager of projects, it's managing people is probably the most important thing, and certainly not something that I excel at. But working well with your crew, keeping people happy and motivated is something that's always a big part of my day-to-day. And then beyond that, just really, I don't need to be able to do everything that happens on site in terms of the construction of the home, but I sure need to understand it and sure need to know how to guide subcontractors in the right way and have people on site at the right time, have materials on site at the right time. So,
yeah. For architects, architects are generalists. Really, we kind of, and I think this applies as well to builders. You need to be able to converse with a really diverse set of experts in various fields. And so you don't necessarily need to, and you shouldn't think that you know all of these fields. You don't know this stuff. You need to know how to talk to someone who does. So you need to know something about the language, and that's something you pick up and you study. And in school, and you're certainly doing a baseline level of understanding the physics and the engineering, but ultimately you need to understand what a professional engineer does and what drives them and what their constraints are. And then likewise, you need to understand what drives the plumber, the electrician, the HVAC sub, the tile subcontractor. You need to kind of pick up a little bit of each one of those things and respect each of those people and bring them in and learn from them and make sure that they understand that they are an important part of the whole process. And
understanding what's essential and what's not. What do you not need to spend your time on? What do you not want to be spinning your wheels doing when other people can handle it?
right.
Yeah, and on the other side of Tim's point of understanding the various trades and subcontractors that you have, you also need to be able to understand how to communicate your conversations with those people and the more technical aspects to your client, because they need to have an understanding of what the options are and why they are what they are and why some other ones aren't on the table. That goes for what these guys do as well as the furniture that we make.
To your last question, I wanted to tell a quick story. Kevin and I were at a project that Tim was the architect on before Tim and Lucas officially became business partners, and we were just going about our day, and we get a call.
Is this vinyl?
Yep, this is vinyl. We get a call from Lucas, and he's like, "Oh my God, you guys, you gotta get over here right now to another job site." He didn't really tell us everything that was going on, but there was he basically just said like, "Get over here now," and we got over there, and it was the move-in day for the client. Tannery, and the front door is wide open, and there's water gushing out the front door of the house, like a waterfall of water coming out the front door of this house. And what had happened was one of the HVAC guys had set off a sprinkler, and it was an old building. It was the kind of sprinklers that you couldn't turn off manually. The fire department had to go down to the basement of the building and turn this giant wheel to turn off the sprinklers. So these powerful sprinklers were going for like 45 minutes, before,
Probably a lot less, but at 40 gallons a minute.
yeah, 40 gallons a minute. Each
felt
sprinkler
like
is
a long
40
time.
gallons a minute, right? And there were like 6 of them. My, my point is, no, I'm not trying to beat up on Lucas. This wasn't his fault. What I'm saying here is, for Lucas, this is at a point in which his business was growing. He's starting to take on, bigger scale projects with more design, harder design elements, more money involved on the client, and something that was out of his control and not his fault happened. And, this is a moment where you could just fold and crumble. And instead, and we had other job sites going on. I think at the time, Flora was probably 1, so if anybody here who's a parent knows a 1-year-old, it's also a job. And instead of crumbling, basically the next day we just all came back to work, and Lucas just started putting together a plan to fix all of the damage, keep the client from, being too upset. And there were ramifications that of the problem, but Lucas worked through them all calmly, and the client relations side, and then the understanding of how you can solve a problem and how you can work with different teams, because at that point we didn't really have the opportunity to do a lot of the work ourselves. So you had to bring in your knowledge of other disciplines and bring in other people and other teams and manage that. So anyways, that's all. It's just, experience is, 50% doing things right and then saying, oh, nice, we can do that again, and 50% like just totally messing up, doing things wrong, and then learning from it. And you just gotta fight through that, and then you find yourself at the end of it, and that's when you can really start to, do your profession without hindrance.
What do you love best about the work that you do?
I like making
yeah.
sawdust.
Go ahead.
I like building things. It's not as much a part of my role at Cannon Hill anymore. I'm more on the administrative side at this point. But what we do every day is fun, and to be perfectly frank about it, I love having access to a professional wood shop. It's pretty nice,
Yeah, I mean, just some of the most fun times I've had in my life have been on a building site. With construction or any craft-related pursuit, to be able to have visual evidence of your work, to be able to come in every day and see it incrementally change, and I think, there's two sides of it for me. I think the camaraderie and sharing in those successes with your team is incredible, and then there are also these silent moments where you make something come together, you create something on your own, and just enjoying that within yourself. Just your relationship to your craft is something that I'm so grateful to have in my life, and I just couldn't imagine. I've been building nonstop since the middle of college, and literally don't think I've taken less than a week off at any time, and I know I'll just do it until I die, and I love it.
For me, I mean, we get to work on a lot of really old structures, so I think what I enjoy most is kind of when we start a new project and we look at a new space. It's always exciting to kind of peel back layers and to just have this open conversation with people about what are we trying to do? Are we adding square footage? Are we completely overhauling the building envelope? What's the program that we're trying to do? And then having that argument about that kind of push and pull about, well, what's the best way of going about this? And that to me is it's just fun, and it's so much fun then to take something that other people are kind of afraid of because it's in such terrible shape, and knowing that that you can transform it, but knowing that there are probably multiple right answers, and so everyone has to kind of collectively come together and figure out, what are we going to do?
I would say like when you work with your hands, or you work on a job site, or you work in a workshop, once everyone is good enough at their job that you can kind of get into this flow zone where people are doing their job and there's a lot of nonverbal communication and everybody kind of gets what's going on, then your mind is free to have a good time. You can joke around with your coworkers and you can stay loose. And I never had an office job ever. In high school or college, internships, beyond, I've never sat at a computer for work. I always liked just being, on the go, and that's what I loved about it. When before I left working for Lucas, Kevin Lucas and I were framing a house out in Old Lyme, Connecticut, and we drove out Monday mornings, and we worked Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, long days, long past when the sun went down, middle of winter, outdoors, just with the floodlights on, running big extension cords from a house about 100 yards away before there was power on site. And then we'd all drive back Thursday night, to be with our loved ones. And it was just a lot of fun. We worked really hard, and then, we hung out, we ate mac and cheese, and just like, and John Newton as well from 09?
My
10?
class, 10.
Yeah, you 10?
Yeah, yep.
John Newton as well was in that crew. So yeah, it's like, it can be like being on a sports team, everybody who works collaboratively in any field is on a team with their coworkers, including, all of your teachers are on a team. But there's something about being in a workshop or on a job site that makes it feel a little bit more like a sports team, because there's just like that very physical element to it.
You mentioned how rewarding it is to see, when you have a particularly good makeup of your company or your team, which is changing year to year. It is pretty rewarding to see, and I think it was just a couple months ago that you were commenting on a couple of the Carpenters, and just Lucas texted me and he was just saying how happy he was to see these tasks that probably a couple of years ago Lucas wouldn't have been handing them off to someone else, because there were finished details, carpentry that was a little more advanced. And we have 2 or 3 folks in particular who are really growing and learning a lot and taking ownership of their work and pride in it, and it is incredibly rewarding to see. On the flip side, it is really hard right now, and I'm sure folks have kind of heard about it, just the trades in general, and kind of the labor force. People talk about it a lot, like how hard it is to find people who are either interested in or excelling at it for one reason or another. That's been one of the bigger pain points, the turnover, and trying to understand why. We're often saying we don't understand why more people aren't kind of pursuing it, but it is really challenging to find people, and a lot of people are retiring, folks who did know how to run jobs, and so that's been a big struggle.
A lot of opportunity out there, boys.
So I'm going to ad-lib for a second. This wasn't a question on my sheet, but so you guys work in a lot of really old houses in Charlestown and Somersville. When you're pulling down walls and pulling up floors, what's the weirdest thing you've ever found in the walls or the floors of the house? Anything like gross?
Oh, we found some really cool stuff. In terms of stuff behind walls, nothing too exotic, old liquor bottles and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Newspapers.
yeah, we had a project in one project in Charlestown where we uncovered a old water storage tank, essentially a beautifully intact brick igloo that was a freshwater storage tank, we think, that later became an incinerator. But something that, our excavation contractor had to bring in a special attachment to break this thing up that's 175 years old. So that was pretty cool. And then similarly at Green Street, we're demoing the slab in the basement, and all of a sudden you can just hear concrete splashing into water, and come to learn that this 2-family building had a header in the foundation wall that spanned over what was a spring-fed well, and we're trying to dig down this basement and get all of this excavation and water out, and we're coming in what was in the morning and what was a muddy pool of water is crystal clear, and fresh water is upwelling into the basement. So, not ideal.
So I have one more question, and then we'll open it up for questions from all of you. What advice would you have for someone who's looking to get into this kind of work?
I would say, if you know that at the age of 17 or 18, I would say look at Wentworth, look at Northeastern. There's Drexel. There's definitely some highly reputable colleges in the Boston area and beyond that have really great design and industrial skill programs that set you up for careers in the trades. And I didn't know really anything about that when I was 17 or 18. It wasn't on my radar at all. And the guy I started Cannon Hill with, Sam O'Leary, he went to Wentworth, and he was an industrial design major. And these schools have co-op programs. So as part of your degree, I know Northeastern is a 5-year undergraduate degree, and as part of your degree, you're going to do 2 6-month paid internships out there in the world somewhere. And Doug Cochran, who was in my class at RL, he went to Northeastern. I know for one of his, he was doing electrical work for large hotels. He was driving around, I think it was like Maine and Alaska, doing on his motorcycle, going from hotel to hotel, doing electrical work for them. I mean, he carved it out the way he wanted to, and he's made a career in welding now. And so, yeah, I would say, you have some of the more formal institutional channels to go in these directions. And then you've got summer jobs, that ask around. There's probably somebody here with a parent or a sibling or a cousin who's, running a contracting business or a plumbing business or electrical business, and you could get a summer job, and see how that goes. So
I would add that, I mentioned that I was interested in architecture from a young age, but I've also said that it's building and architecture and craft are you have to be a generalist, and I think that, you can come at it from so many different angles. And so, in terms of studying and what you're focused on, I think that's great advice to look at these dedicated programs. But I think that, there's so much value in bringing a diverse set of studies to the act of problem solving. It doesn't have to be something that or are pursuing particularly from a young age, but certainly worth looking into those dedicated avenues if it is something that interests you.
Yeah, and I'd say if you're interested in getting into it, just get into it. Find a project. I think my only regret with building is that I didn't get into it sooner. I envy these guys that grew up in it, and it's just second nature to them. And whether I would encourage anyone to just engage more with the built environment and learn more about, think about craft, develop, an interest in craft, and then, but in terms of a career, you got to be very passionate about it, and you got to be hardworking, and you got to have both of those. You got to love what you do.
And the only other thing I'd say is that it's like anything. You're going to start at the bottom. Our youngest guys who come in and work for us, they are not doing the glamorous stuff in the workshop. But if you start at the bottom with a knowledge base and a skill set that you've developed on your own beforehand, you can really shorten the time that you're going to spend there, because you bring something to the table that the next person carrying boards around the job site or whatever it may be probably doesn't have. Same as anything, develop your skill set, and that can get you to the fun stuff much more quickly.
Thank you guys so much. So does anybody have any questions? Tate? Sure, the question was, what have your favorite projects been?
We actually, I said this to the client, and I had to convince him a little bit that that it's not something I say to everyone, but we built this, essentially an office set for a client just recently, and it's this really cool waterfall desk that wraps around in an L, and it has, an associated cabinet and shelf. And the thing about it is, because of the way that it was designed and built, you have this incredible sense of flow that runs all the way around. And it really, once it was installed, it really transformed what had been an unimpressive office in an old residential home into something completely different. And I think that's the cool thing, is when we can deliver a table or a desk or anything, and immediately once it's in place, everything around it changes. That's a really cool moment.
I would say that we talk about how I don't think we've had a project that we would choose to do again. There really are emotional roller coasters. We're happy to have completed them, and happy to have clients who are happy, after the fact. Right now, we're pretty close to completing a project where might be my favorite because the clients have just been so wonderful, and the feeling has been great. They've been so easy, and but in terms of structures or individual projects, I think actually the one that Kevin and Zach worked on in Somerville for our good friends, and we just recently completed a phase 2 of it, was pretty rewarding because it was, I remember walking into the open house before they bought it, and people were aghast at just how awful this place was. And so that was really rewarding and exciting, and they put a lot of trust in us, and it continues to be kind of the home base for our company. So
I like the ones where that I do for friends or for like places I can go, like a restaurant or a bar, because we make furniture, and then we deliver it to someone's home, and then I can't go there later and say, hey, can I come over for dinner and see my table? So, we have some projects out there in the world at mostly bars and restaurants in Boston, and then I've built some furniture for close friends, and when I go to their home, for RL grads, and I go to their home and can see the furniture or eat at it. That's fun. But yeah, I'd say those are probably my favorite.
I think we have time for one more question. Michael?
I had a question about how you guys sort of get business. Is it ads? Is it from referrals, especially from, whether it's a business, a bar, something, or just a person?
Yeah, good question.
Did you hear that question? How do they get their business?
How do we get our
How do
business?
they generate their business?
Do you know, I wonder what people think. When you Google something, do you realize how much is happening behind the scenes? How much money is being poured into Google for businesses to show up at various spots on page 1? It's a lot of money. So we get about 66% of our business through Google, and that's pay to play. It's not just the fun yellow pages for free. We pay a lot of money to show up on page 1. And then we've also worked very, very hard for Google to recognize us as a good organic lead to show people, because Google also is incentivized to look good. So they want to show people the right thing. And then that other 33%, which is a growing sector of our business, is the design community of New England. So there are interior designers and builders, contractors who design spaces, and then once they find us and like working with us, their job is to go out and design homes, and then they just bring those projects straight to us. Just get another phone call, hey Zach, got another one for you, and those are the best because those are repeat business, recurring business. Once I've gotten that person in my book of clients, I'm not spending more money or a lot more time on each subsequent project.
Yeah, and we have a list of 500 or 600 interior designers around New England, and we're in the middle right now. It's kind of an ongoing project, but I just cold call designers, you know, and sometimes they pick up, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes they're interested, and sometimes they're not. But one thing that's really nice about working for a company like Cannon Hill is that once we have them, we've got them. You know, we don't lose clients because we do a good job, we communicate well, and we remain open and honest. So it's, like Zach says, getting a designer on board is a great way to have a nice, you know, steady stream of projects. It may not be a fast stream, but you know that it's coming, and you know that they know the program, they know the price point, you know, they know what's on the table when they work with Cannon Hill moving forwards.
Yeah, very different for us in that we only have a small handful of clients a year, but the Charlestown Mothers Association has been very good to us, but just pretty much word of mouth. We work for a lot of friends. We work for a lot of people we have close relationships with, which I know a lot of builders shy away from that, but it's been great for us, thankfully.
Yeah, we don't do any SEO kind of. I mean, we put a lot on our website and share that, and for us, marketing, photography, making sure to document your work is absolutely important. But it's definitely just the network and making sure you do a good job so that people will give a good recommendation.
Thank you guys so much. This is really fun.
All right. I went by quick.
I got a couple of things to say. First of all, thank you for being here, but in a way that I hope doesn't sound patronizing at all. I just want to say how proud I am on behalf of the school of all of you and what you decided to do. We get lots of speakers in here who've been successful in different ways, and what I would consider to be ordinary ways, these are extraordinary ways in which you're successful. And I think the thing that's missing in the narrative is how much courage it's taken for you to follow your muse, to do what it is that makes your heart sing, and to make a viable option of that. That's fantastic. Every day that you are being put through your paces here, and that's about to happen again. I'm sorry if we're a little late for first period. But you're studying a subject, and the subjects themselves are really important. But what, if you were to read the catalog, you'll understand, is that it's about so much more than the individual subjects. It's about collaboration and teamwork. It's about problem solving. It's about communication. All of that has been demonstrated by these guys here today. And I would say the larger lesson to be learned here is not to settle for something that's less than meaningful or less than a pleasure in your life's work. You will try out different things. You'll try on different roles. Some of those will seem to suit you. Some of them will not. But don't settle until you found the thing that makes your heart sing. Thank you guys for being remarkable exemplars of that very thing. Thanks very much.